In this video, I'll be explaining all of the curves in market power simply. And these include average revenue, marginal revenue, average cost, and marginal cost. In the case for average revenue, this is the revenue earned per unit of output sold, and the calculation is average revenue equals total revenue divided by quantity, which equals the price. And the average revenue per unit of output represent the demand curve. A fall in average revenue for the firm means there is a fall in price for the consumer, and lowering the average revenue will typically get more sales, and according to the law of demand, quantity demanded increases when prices decrease. And in the case of marginal revenue, this is the extra revenue from selling one additional unit. So when a firm decides to lower the price of their products, they will essentially have to lower the prices of every single unit produced. For a business, in order to sell more units, they typically would lower the price. And lowering the price for everyone will lower the marginal revenue. And moving on to the average cost, which is the total cost per unit of output produced divided by the quantity. This cost curve is usually a U-shaped, and the reason is because it is driven by economies of scale from here all the way down to here, and because of diseconomies of scale and diminishing returns, it increases from the bottom here all the way to here. And lastly, marginal cost. This is the cost of producing an additional unit of output. It represents the firm's supply curve in the short run, and it suffers from the law of diminishing returns, as the firm is unable to increase its capital, which is fixed. Let me illustrate this for you. So for instance, in a small bubble tea shop, the business has just started and there are 2 employees, but as you can see, there is a load of customers waiting to be served. You can see that there are a few problems here. There's clearly not enough employees to serve these people. So the impact of this is wasted time. As you can see, there's idle equipment, which makes it very inefficient. As there are only 2 employees, output is very low, and the cost per drink is relatively high. So in this example, we are at the first section of the J, which is illustrated here, as this indicates cost per drink is relatively high at a very low output. Now, in the same example, you can see that there are more employees, and all workers here are specializing on their own equipment. You can see that there is no time wasted and the flow is optimized. As all employees are now specializing in their jobs, there are significant efficiency gains and output increases. In this scenario, this is where the bottom section of the J is achieved, which is here. As you can see, quantity has increased and the costs have also decreased. And lastly, in this example, this is where we are adding labor with limited capital goods. You can see that in my example, that employees are waiting to use the machines. There are more mistakes being made, spilled drinks, litter on the floor, and things look like they are spinning into chaos. There's an obvious wastage of materials, which increases operation costs. And despite all of these inefficiencies, employees are paid in full. And this means that costs will increase. And this is represented at the top end of the J, which is here. And at this point, this is where cost of producing an additional unit of output is increasing due to the diminishing marginal returns. Now, in this part of the video, we are going to use the 4 curves that we've learned so far to figure out the optimal quantities that firms can produce in order to hit their objective. The first objective is profit maximization. This is when marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So let's have a look at before this point. This is when marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. This will inform the firm that the marginal revenue of the next unit remains positive. So firms will decide to create additional units until marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So what does this mean? This is when the point where the additional revenue gained from producing the last unit exactly covers the additional cost, meaning that the marginal profit, or the profit from that single unit produced, is 0. At this point, every single unit of output produced by the firm is profitable. And the moment when marginal costs exceed marginal revenue, that unit of output then becomes a loss. The next objective is revenue maximization. This is when marginal revenue equals 0. And at this point, the firm has reached its maximum possible total revenue. And every unit of output after this point causes total revenue to decline. And this is due to a negative marginal revenue. Firms will want to achieve this objective of revenue maximization to gain market share, deter competition, and to achieve economies of scale. Now moving on to productive efficiency, this is when average costs equals marginal cost. And this is when a firm is operating at its highest level of efficiency, as they are producing output at the lowest possible average costs. And any production level before this point is less efficient, and the reason for this is that the firm is currently experiencing economies of scale. So this means that expanding production or making an additional unit, the firm is able to use its resources more effectively. Every unit produced after AC equals MC is inefficient because of diseconomies of scale. And you can see that with the rising average costs. And the reason why it is inefficient is because the cost penalty of the next unit is pulling the average costs up. And the last objective is sales maximization. This is when average revenue equals average costs. And the ultimate goal of this objective is to produce the highest level of output without making a loss. In business, this is also known as the break-even point. And as you can see on the diagram, the quantity produced is the highest out of the 4 objectives covered. And the reason why they use this strategy is to increase market share or to drive out competitors. I hope that helped. I hope you guys have a good day. Bye-bye.